But I saw how my parents suffered because it was a particularly, I would say, unjust. And therefore, I just told to myself, look, if my parents had better lawyers advising them, hopefully they wouldn't have got themselves in the mess that they would have. And I think there will be a lot of people who need the advice because you need to protect yourself whenever you make deals, you enter into transactions. And if you don't think about it carefully, you could really end up with, very bad position. And so because of, I was mainly driven by that I then became a lawyer and became a corporate lawyer.
Question. Have you, any of you, and it's interesting since we saw the calling of St. Matthew, do any of you feel like you have a calling on your life, or have you ever had a moment where you feel like I'm meant for something in particular? I asked a tough question, I guess.
So the question is, do you feel like you've been called to do something? For me, yes, absolutely. The field I'm in, I very much believe that God has placed me in this field with the skill sets that I've got. They're perfect for the field I'm in. The job I do is business continuity and crisis management. So throughout my upbringing, I suppose, or growing up, I've learnt certain skill sets, and those skill sets have come together perfectly to manifest itself in this job that I do now. And I find that everything's just come together perfectly to be able to perform this job to the best of my abilities. So yes, for me, absolutely.
That is a hard question. Actually, when I was much younger, I was going through a difficult time, and this pastor, I don't think you would say it's a prophecy, but he came up to me and he said, God has something for you. Are you this, and this? Then I'm like, yeah. And the thing is, he's not a pastor of my church, he's just a visiting pastor. And so it was really shocking to me. And he said that God wants to tell you that he's made you the way you are, so that you can be a tower of strength to the people around you. So I'm not sure whether that is a calling. Right now I'm also actually in the legal field, and I'm actually struggling and wondering how am I helping people in this particular field. Yeah, because to be frank, a lot of what we do is we help rich people get rich, and yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Matthew, I had a question. Do you mind? My question is, I'd really be interested to know, what is the most important thing in your lives right now? And it doesn't have to be the job. It could be anything. A relationship. It can be the future. It can be whatever.
Hi, my name's Lucy. I guess I'm kind of tying together this question and the question before. My whole life I was like, what shall I do, God? What shall I do? And really, I think it's probably taken me quite a long time, probably longer than quite a lot of other people. But actually, just over the last sort of 5 years, being able to just trust God in just letting go and not worrying about what that looks like or what it's called or defined as. and just actually following him has been amazing. And so I found myself in Burundi in Africa, and now I find myself in Hong Kong. I work in the charity sector. I work for a charity called Viva. I moved here 2 weeks ago, which is great. But for me, one of the best things that I'm trying to just align with really is just to live authentically and not to strive and not to be controlled and not to define what it is or what my goals are, because I've been goal-driven my whole life. So actually just to trust and to be and just to see where God leads me.
Karen?
Hello. Anyways, I was running the rat race for the longest time until a couple of months ago. I'm taking in the corporate world, but I'm taking a break right now. I'm trying to, I've really realized that my family, my closest ones around me are actually the most important thing to me right now. I also just got baptized, so I'm trying to put more importance on my spiritual life. But before, I'd say November 2013, I would say my job was the most important thing to me, and now I've realized that my priorities should be different.
I think that's incredible, because I didn't get that until I was much later.
Hi everyone, I'm Leia, or you can call me Yaxing as well. I'm originally from Shenzhen, so just across the border, but I've lived in the UK for quite a long time. To me, the most important thing has always been the kind of being myself and to really pursue things that I wanted to do. As an Asian kid, my parents always want me to do finance or be rich or this kind of thing, or to do business. So when I was in school, the teacher asked a question saying, so everyone, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, businesswoman. And then somehow I really liked science, really liked chemistry, so I ended up doing chemistry, but wanting to be a scientist. But then before graduation, I was thinking, well, I might not be made to be a scientist, but I can still help people who want to be a scientist or help promote science. So now I ended up in sort of health communication and also science communication, so linking to policy research, that kind of thing, which is something that I really, really want to do, so I really, really appreciated that God has arranged this for me.
Hi everyone, I'm David. I was born in Hong Kong, but I moved to England and lived there for a long time. I guess the most important thing to me is concerns with my future, as I've been working a job for a year and I'm wondering if what happens if my contract runs out in a year. Do I want to stay, or do I want to move on with my job, or do I want to go back to school and learn something? However, I do focus on my spiritual life. I just got baptized some time ago and I'm coming to Oasis and Union Church, which has really helped me to meet new people and try to get to know different things and get to know what God wants from me. That's all.
Matthew, you had asked a question, actually, long before this evening. He had told us what questions he'd like to ask, and one of them was, how might Christ be a source of encouragement, hope, guidance to a corporate lawyer? I thought that was an interesting question. But it's great whenever you have questions, because it's an opportunity to really sort of think things through, particularly if you're going to be providing answers to other people. But in my case, the thing that's, I think, most encouraging is that I think that as Christians, or when you do become a Christian, I think you come into possession of a truth. And that puts everything in perspective. And so that's why the question, what's most important to you? And by perspective, I mean when you're dealing with people, which is what you're going to be doing in all situations, whether you're a corporate lawyer or something else. Knowing about what Christ did for us, I think, puts you in a position where you're able to have the right perspective about relationships, about what people say, about how people evaluate you, about challenges that you might have on the job. I think the other thing about being a Christian is that it provides a real model for behavior. We have a great model in Jesus Christ. And so when we talk about being in the workplace, again, whether you're a corporate lawyer or something else, I think you have a model to emulate. And the other thing is, and I guess perhaps very importantly for myself, is I really do believe that there's nothing that can separate me from the love of Jesus Christ. And that sustains me through everything at work. And again, of course, this is not exclusive to being a corporate lawyer or not. But so what's most important to me, I think, is really just growing in my faith, having that abiding sense of Jesus in my life, and with me every day. I think another question that you had asked was, have you seen Christ in the workplace or as a no, I haven't, but I've always had this abiding sense of Christ being with me, and that, I guess, is Christ in the workplace for me. I don't know. You had these questions as well before. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the question of me, not just for a lawyer, but for most professions, but definitely for a lawyer. I think one of the issues that we struggle with sometimes is integrity. I think one needs to be very clear to say that, look, being a lawyer, sometimes you do have the ability to influence the outcome of certain matters. And I think you need to do that with integrity. You need to do what is fair. You need to do what is right and to do what is just. And what is right, what is fair, what is just, I think we just go back to sometimes to what the principles are in the Bible and tell ourselves, look, what is the right Christian thing to do here? And I think the comment was also raised earlier that, look, do we just help rich people to get richer? I think that's not the goal of what we do. You think about it as, as was read out by Matthew, I do a lot of IPOs, initial public offerings, and I know the rich people do get rich. But I think what is even more meaningful to me is the fact that we do see that as the companies raise money and they expand, there's a lot of people who benefit from it, either the employees, the other stakeholders, some of the smaller shareholders. But effectively, it is a way for progress. It is a way for money is not there just for the purposes of money. Money is there to help for the rest of the people as well. So, if, for example, I have some unhappiness, or if I have to work on an IPO of a casino, because I see that, that's really not quite the kind of enterprise that I really wish to help or to work on. And there will be certain other callings, certain other tasks that I would say, look, frankly, can you count me out, please? Now, it takes a lot of courage to be able to say that. I don't claim that it's always possible, but I think one has to have a little bit of a moral compass as to what one should be doing in our career.
I just want to share one quick thing, because I'm no longer a corporate lawyer, and I actually found being a corporate lawyer really, really hard. I really wanted to be married. It's not that I was desperate to get married that moment, but I did want to be married one day and have a family. And I worked 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, especially when I was in New York. And I worked with no other Christians, and I worked with people who are really intense. And I remember saying, please, please, can I go to church on Sunday morning? And I'm saying, okay, you can go for 15 minutes. You know, well, you can go for 15 minutes and you need to come back. So I just really struggled, and I worked 24 hours a day. I didn't think that I was very good at what I was doing, and yet I did feel that God was with me and that I was there for a purpose. And now I look back on my time as a corporate lawyer, and I think I learned so much. I really do think God had me there. That although it was years of me working crazy and not being able to meet anybody, and I remember my sisters would have to bring me my dry cleaning and my prescriptions to the office because I could never even do my own laundry. But I learned so much, and even in that time that was a little bit dark, to be honest. That is the only time in my life where I've had people almost daily. I worked in an office with 3,000 other people, huge New York City law office. It's the only time in my life where I've had people come up to me and say, there is something about you. What about you? Why are you so happy all the time? And I really didn't think of myself as happy, but I had a joy and a peace that many of my other colleagues didn't have. And now my job couldn't be more different. I'm not an M&A lawyer anymore. I live and work with pregnant teenagers, some of whom are as young as 11 and 12, and care for babies and special needs children who don't have families. And I think, God, I question you and I doubted you so much. Why am I working so hard and never going to meet anybody? Why am I doing this? My dream was to be an ambassador and to, change the world and to serve others, and I'm not doing that. But I can tell you that I don't think the board would have hired me without the experience that I had as a corporate lawyer. I think it gave me a lot of credibility, both with our donors, with our board. Being an M&A lawyer, being a corporate lawyer, really helped me to understand how businesses are run. All those long hours doing diligence and whatever actually paid off, because now I run an organization, even though we have very limited resources and we're a nonprofit. I have 120 staff and 680 volunteers. And we are really looking at how we can have a greater impact in this city where we have more crisis pregnancy among teenagers than greater metropolitan New York City. We have increased numbers of abandoned babies and children all over Hong Kong. We have thousands of children growing up in orphanages with no way out. And I think my legal training has been invaluable. Being able to understand how organizations work and professionalize our nonprofit, I wouldn't have had that without my experience as a corporate lawyer. Being able to speak to our donors in a way that they can understand, even being able to hire more professional, qualified people to take us to the next level. So, sometimes when I guess the only thing I'd want to leave you with is if you feel like, if you're in the law or you're in some other job and you're not sure, is this for me? I feel like God called me here, but this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, God can really use it, and sometimes you don't know about it for years. But I am so thankful, even for all those sleepless nights.
You touched on this a little bit, but I was wondering if you could give obviously you don't want to give too specific, but specific examples of when you found yourself in a situation where that truth, that compass, and kind of knew what was going on, maybe might not have been right or whatever. Like, what were specific things that you did, that your faith and all those things kind of integrated? What do you do in that situation as a lawyer, as a corporate lawyer specifically? And it was mentioned, it's perceived often that the goal is to make the rich richer and all those things. So what specific things, or maybe specific instances, examples, if you're able to do that, could you give us maybe an idea?
Okay, Ian.
I think when you go through life as a lawyer, if you think about practice of law as in litigation, it looks very exciting when you get cross-examination in court and you try to find out what the truth is, and you get to it. But I think that is not what law is about. There's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of very, frankly, very boring, very dull stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Which is why when Elliot talks about working 20 hours a day, it's not 20 hours of adrenaline charge, process. It's kind of a lot of very mundane tasks. But when you look at a mundane task, one of the phrases that I remember is that, I believe it's in Colossians, you talk about whatever your tasks are, you work heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. You need to have that little compass and say that, look, I'm not doing this mundane task, I'm not doing this purely for what it is. I'm doing it because if I have a calling and if God has placed me here, then let me do it with joy. Let me do it with, heartily. Let me do it with a joyful heart and try to see that what that purpose is. And you think about how Joseph, when he was in, he went through so much in terms of when he was put in jail, and then there was so much that was happening that was wrong in his life. God in the end had a purpose for him. So you think about, and we all should believe that God has put us in a particular place for a particular purpose. And so let us have a grateful, joyful, and obedient heart, work on our task. And as we work on that task, I can assure you that if you have the right attitude, you do a much better job than if you not. I'm sorry.
Bye, Kane. Ryan, in my case, most recently what's happened is one of our staff had, for expediency or whatever, signed a document and signed the customer's name to this document, purchasing a certain investment product. All was made good. No losses. The individual but the customer, when they originally found out about this, reported this to the police. But all was made good. The individual was let go. The police then subsequently came to us and said, could you help us with additional information because we're investigating this potential possibility of prosecuting this individual. And I looked at the request and I said, well, we don't have to help, do we? I mean, it's up to us, and I chose not to. I mean, we can have a big debate about this, but I thought this individual has lost her job. I know it was very tough in going through the whole internal investigation thing, in determining fault and so forth. And frankly, I made the judgment, and I think it was really a sense of forgiveness. And I said, no, we're not going to help the police. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, we're not obstructing justice, and they're just asking if they could have some information. And we said, it's up to us, and I said no. So that's one instance, and that was most recent. On a sort of very minor but everyday sort of thing, I tend to run late for meetings, and it's very easy for me to sort of get very excited when I'm running late, and it's always my own fault. But of course, if it's the taxi driver or something, I'll just get very excited. But in those instances, so many times I've caught myself, and it's only because I've had this abiding sense that Christ was there with me. And I said, come on. I just calmed down, and I said, and this is perspective. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'll go into the meeting, I'll make a joke. and it'll all be good and we carry on. I know it's disrespectful to those who are in the meeting, but I just run late. I'm just terrible at that. But that has helped me through in terms of my interaction with individuals. This abiding sense, just keeps me honest in that regard. Trivial, but I mean that's a very real situation in my life.
Sorry, can I ask? So I have a law degree, and I'm sort of in the midst of trying to decide whether or not I want to pursue a career in corporate law, perhaps other areas of law, maybe something entirely different. And something that concerns me is that as a corporate lawyer, I would imagine occasionally you need to represent a client whose business practices you don't necessarily think are that ethical, or maybe beyond that they conflict with your faith. And I think Kay kind of touched on this when he talked about casinos. That I can think of maybe a few other industries who have practices that you might question, or even just particular companies. And I wonder, in those situations, Kay said, he's in the position where he can say, I'm out, I can't do this. But I can imagine as a trainee, if I said that to my senior partner, oh, sorry, I don't really like this client for this reason, I can't imagine he'd be or she'd be too impressed. So I wonder if you have ever encountered any type of situation like this, and perhaps how you reconciled it within yourself.
This mic is coming through better. Why don't you use this?
So I'm much more junior than these guys. My life got a little bit better as it got a little bit more senior when I moved back to Hong Kong, so I wasn't working as crazy hours. But I'm not a partner, so I'm certainly not in a position of saying, I don't like that client, or I don't like what they do. I got to do whatever anybody tells me to do, And actually, one of the first deals I worked on was a merger of two of the largest casino companies in the U.S. And I have absolutely worked on deals where I did not think that my clients were particularly, admirable people or companies. But I also think that I was in such a unique position, both with my own colleagues and with my clients, to truly be salt and light. And I actually found that I had such incredible opportunities to be a reflection and a fragrance of Christ, even with all the incredible mistakes I've made and not even being a very good lawyer. I do know, actually I had countless instances where people were like, wow, there's something different about you, like I said earlier. And in fact, one of my clients who I thought was the most these people seriously concern me with their business practices. And, I would speak, because you do have an opportunity, I think, as somebody's lawyer to, to speak out truth. And they were the one, I remember when I left my first law firm, they sent me the biggest basket of flowers I have ever received, and that's somebody who I was, was pretty straight with. I don't necessarily think that's the right approach, So I don't think it's a bad thing. There are people who are unethical or, in the wrong industry, no matter what you do. And I think, and even if you're a litigator, there's going to be people who you may think they're guilty, but I think being a lawyer, you're in a very unique position as advisor, and I think it can be a real God-given position where you get to speak truth.
So, since you have both experiences, in which area, litigation or corporate, would there be more of these instances? Actually, not just only in terms of the clients that you work for, but your own integrity. For example, your boss comes around when you do litigation and he says, just explain it, just make up a story, explain how it happened. Or maybe in a corporate you do something of that sort. So, between litigation and corporate, what is the frequency? Which one gets more of it?
I think I've had a pretty tame career in the sense of having to address these kinds of really stark conflicts. But that's not to say that there haven't been times when I've been faced with ethical issues. And but it's never been this sort of, if we're going to win this particular motion or if we're going to win this trial, you're going to have to say this of something other than the truth. Or in the corporate sense, or in the corporate area,